And we always start these with Matt, who is also known as the shoeless therapist or
Yeah,
sock full therapist, as Tammy
sock.
likes to say.
You're trying to
I'm
get that
trying
movie.
to add to your
Um,
moniker there. So yeah. So what you got for us in the sock drawer today?
Well, and I will do a little plug. Anybody's on Instagram, the Shoeless Therapist on Instagram, you can see little videos that I make that are like 90 seconds long if anybody wants to subscribe. So my socks today, the best way to describe these socks, I don't think I've shown this particular one to you guys before, but these socks are like grandma's ugly couch socks.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I love them. They're actually also super comfortable.
They
Um,
look like it. Yes.
but like I don't even know how to describe it because in my mind, when I was a kid, grandmas would always have these ugly floral couches.
Or bedspreads or
Mm,
wallpaper.
or
So
wallpaper, right? And so like hopefully I'm not offending anybody when I say that, but like if you like floral couches, like good for you. But these socks just reminded me of that. And I was, because floral couches will come back in sometime. It might be another 50 years, but
well, let me guess, you have a floral couch as we speak, right?
I do not.
I do not either. So yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I know at one point, I think my mom had a floral couch. So, and she's a grandma. So there you go.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. And you know what? If it makes you happy, that's all that matters. If it's
No,
comfortable and makes you
totally.
happy, it's all
But
good.
but that's the best way to describe my socks,
Yeah.
and they're comfy,
Yeah.
and I like
They look
so
comfy. Yeah. So. Okay, so let's back up and catch people up on last
totally.
time so that
Mhm.
you can have a through thread.
Yeah. So last time, what we talked about was essentially steps in forgiveness. And the very first step in forgiveness was the person who's been injured has to, and go back, if you go back and watch the other video, we talk about these much more in depth. And so I encourage people to go do that because I'm going to go through these somewhat quickly. But the person who was injured, who gets their wound hit, has to come to their partner or to whoever they're going to ask for comfort from, and they're going to have to tell them, they're going to have to disclose, hey, here's what happened. Here's my injury. Um, here's my hurt, right? And they have to be vulnerable and risk that to their partner. Now, a huge mistake, I see this as a massive mistake that happens all the time, is that the other partner is like, oh, it's complaint time. Well, let me start telling you my complaints. And that's a massive mistake. I say that if you realize that you have injuries too, well, tend to the injury of the person who brought it up. And then once that injury has been tended to, and you can even ask, hey, are you in a place? Did that feel good? Did you get what you needed from me? Would you mind if I share an injury that I have? Or start bringing up your own injuries on your own time. Now, a lot of people, and I'm not trying to be rude when I say that, but a lot of people are like, well, why would I want to bring up an injury when things are good? And it's like, because that's how we get them taken care of. And they're like, but things have been smooth. We haven't had any fights. Okay. But you're not going to continue to get healing if you aren't willing to bring up your injuries at times where the person is able to actually tend to you. And when things are good are the times when they can actually tend to you. When things are chaotic, they don't have room to tend to you. And so, big mistake people make there in bringing up injuries. Okay, so that's step one. Step two, the person who rubbed the wound or hit the injury has to tune in and accept that the hurt exists. Ah, I see your injury. I can see why you're in pain. Um, and they then have to openly acknowledge how their behavior uh, hurt or did damage to the partner. And sometimes I struggle to do that, and I'm like, hey, I don't understand how this caused this injury to come up. Can you teach me? And I'll stay in that space long enough until I'm able to go, oh, I get it now. I can acknowledge your injury now. Um, and so, but it doesn't mean that they accept the intention. I intended to hurt you. That's a huge mistake people make in the forgiveness, in the steps of forgiveness, if you will, because they think that in order to apologize, I have to own that I meant to do this. And I would say most of the time when we hurt somebody, we're not meaning to hurt them. And so do not own your intention to hurt somebody if you didn't intend to do it. But don't excuse the hurt just because your intention didn't mean to hurt them. Like that's super painful. If it's like, hey, I have this injury, can you show up for me? And the person's like, I didn't mean to. You shouldn't be hurt because I didn't mean to. And it's like, that's ridiculous. I may not have meant to crash into that other car, but I did it and I can feel bad about it, right? Like that may sound like a dumb analogy, but that's a huge mistake that I see is if I didn't mean to, then I don't need to apologize or I don't need to acknowledge your injury. That's a very immature way of thinking about it. And then step 3, like I said in our last video, I think I went into these even more. Step 3, the person who's been injured has to share the core of the hurt without blaming, without criticizing, without defining their partner. You are a liar. You are an addict. You are a cheater. Those things are not helpful when trying to get somebody to show up in my pain. And so I need to share my hurt and make it about me and about my hurt without blaming, criticizing, defining, name calling my partner. So those are the first three steps. Tammy, any questions before I jump into the other 3, or at least the next one?
No, I think these are all so important and also difficult. Even like with the first step of being willing to talk about, well, things are good. Why would I want to bring it up? And I'm like, but if you're moving closer together, being willing to get into this space can help bring you closer together. Like being willing to do that, not just going, well, we're mostly okay right now. So I appreciated that, and the name calling. eh, eh, I often say, what is the goal? And if the goal is that I want to get my needs met, I want to be bringing the relationship together, I want to do things that will help us all, then looking at it a little more up level, shall we say, than in the I want to get my digs in, and they hurt me and name call, like ultimately, yeah. Do you feel better in the moment? Sure. I just did the 1-2 punch. And at the end of the day, I go, that wasn't really in my integrity. And now we're even more hurt. We're even more distanced.
Yeah.
So I really think it is important to go, what is my goal? How can I show up as my true self and honor me, but also be willing to be vulnerable with you?
Yeah, that old adage comes to mind. I probably said it last time, but I don't remember. But I remember reading a book that my mom told me to read when I was a teenager. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And there's mixed feelings about the book, but I'll be honest, overall that it was awesome. I remember a quote in the book where he says, "If you want honey, don't kick over the beehive." And that idea is like, wow, if I want honey, bees have the ability to hurt and even kill people, right? And so if I want honey, I'm going to treat the bees kindly while I extract honey from the beehive. And if I want my partner, who may have made some terrible mistakes, to help comfort me, I'm going to treat them kindly, right? Don't be mean. Don't throw jabs. And people are like, "Well, but I'm hurt." Yeah. Guess what? You're also an adult and you can work through that pain to be kind. You don't need to be mean to somebody just because they've been mean to you. So, anyway, fun
Proceed. Keep going.
fun
Great stuff.
little okay. So I don't exactly remember the last time we did this. I think I would share it, and then you and I would talk about it. And all the while, we were waiting for questions to come in. And so, you guys, throw your questions in the Q&A right now, even if Tammy and I are in the middle of talking about things. I always love your guys' questions. Um, so the next step. So this is step 4. The one who rubbed the wound, the one who uh, created the hurt in this moment now needs to express an apology, or they need to express real remorse, real regret, real sadness, real guilt. Now, this is an interesting one because I've always remembered I was at one of Troy Love's retreats, the Finding Peace retreat, and I don't even remember the circumstance of like what I did or said, but I hurt somebody in explaining concepts or talking to them, and they were upset at me, and they came to me and they said, "Hey, I didn't like when you said this, whatever it was, right?" And and I sat with them and listened to them, and I expressed remorse that they had heard what they thought they heard that I didn't intend, but I sat with it to where this person felt understood and could tell that I meant no harm, and we were good. Well, it was really interesting because they went to Troy, and Troy had heard the whole conversation, and they said it felt so good that Matt apologized. And Troy said, he didn't apologize to you. And they're like, no, he did. And he's like, no, I heard the whole thing. Matt never said, like, he meant to do this thing. I don't remember the whole circumstance, but it was one of those things. And they were mad. They were like, oh my gosh, he didn't apologize. Well, here's the interesting thing. What I did was I showed up for their pain. I acknowledged their pain and I expressed my sadness that they felt the pain. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't want you to feel that way. That feels terrible. I'm so glad you told me that I could hear your pain. But I wasn't sorry for what I had done, because what I had done was meant to teach the group or help the group with something. And I remember at the time thinking, how interesting is that this person wanted me, I guess, to like apologize and take ownership that I meant to do this harm. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of the times with forgiveness and receiving comfort from each other, it's not going to be, I need to own that when I did this thing, I meant to harm you. And I'll say, I see this so often in using like, um, where you have a spouse who, or a partner who, let's say they have an affair. Now, sometimes the hurt partner is like, I need you to own that you did this on purpose to hurt me. And the hard part is, what they need to own is that they did it, and that it really hurt their partner, and that it wasn't okay, and there's nothing that justifies their behavior, right? Like, but sometimes we want them to own that you thought about me and you knew it would hurt me. And it's like, when people are unhealthy, they're not thinking about all the stupid ways they're going to hurt all these people. In that moment, they're so narrow minded. They're just looking to feel better at whatever cost. And so sometimes the idea is, well, if you can own that you did this on purpose, it's like most of the time, what I see is not, they weren't thinking about it. That's actually part of the problem. They weren't thinking about it. And so we have to be careful in getting an apology from somebody. Sometimes we want them to own an intention that isn't there, and they can't authentically own that intention unless they lie to you. which we all know what lying does. It's not helpful. So maybe we pause here, Tammy, and you and I talk about this one because I see a lot of head nodding. But what are your
Yeah, and I hear similar to you where they're looking for like that it was so intentional that like the addict got up that morning and goes, yeah, just I'm going to go out and do this and it's going to just be so hurtful to my partner and like that's how I'm going to have such a great day of doing that. And it's maladaptive coping mechanisms, it's problematic behaviors because addicts in active addiction don't do life well, and so this is how and it's very compartmentalized. So it's there isn't the intention, again, like you said, no justification for it. It's a reason, not an excuse, all of those things. But yes, if a partner is looking for them to take ownership of, I intentionally went out and hurt you, I did all of those things, then that is not, I'm a big 12 stepper, like, rigorous honesty, that would not be rigorous honesty. If I'm taking ownership for something that I did not do, that I had intention for hurting someone, but that was not the case, that that's the flip side. It's still problematic behaviors, and we've had, unfortunately, partners that are demanding that they take ownership of something. And we've had addicts that have gone, I told her I did this. I never did that, but I told her I did that because she demanded for me to take ownership of that. I was like, but now
oh
you've taken ownership for, and then that's the never ending, path too, because,
I
well, now you did this and I knew you were lying to me. I mean, it's just, what is the goal?
I have had partners take ownership of affairs they never had because they just wanted to make their partner happy because they felt like there was, I mean, and I'm like, oh my gosh, don't do that. Don't take ownership of something that you don't like it, no matter how much it upsets your partner. One of the things I try and teach people is you need to be okay upsetting your partner. You will not have a good relationship if you can't be okay disappointing your partner. Disappoint them, upset them. Now, don't go do it on purpose, but live an authentic life, even if it upsets them. Otherwise, you will never have an authentic relationship. Anyway, that's a little soapboxy for me, but goodness me.
Oh, well, and then I'm going to go to the bottom question first, and thank you for questions. But it says, I've gotten confused because 3 and 4 sound similar, but 3 is the wounded one shares, and 4 is the wounding one shares. But can you particularly clarify those two again?
Yeah, no problem. So the third one is where the person who has been hurt shares the core of the hurt without criticizing, defining, blaming their partner, without calling them names, right? And so step 4 is the person who is now not being criticized, right? The person who's injured or brought up the pain again is able to express real remorse, regret, sadness, guilt, whatever authentically is there, they're able to express that. So it's yeah, I'd be curious which parts feel confusing. I could get into it more. So that's where the where I would say the start of the apology really, it's step 4 is where the person who has done the hurting is really just starting to work into a healthy, proper apology. And I think I made this clear on the last one. Another huge mistake is the person who apologizes way too quickly. And so to give you an example, I learned as a kid that if I said sorry, maybe I can make this conflict go away. And so there, I remember being like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Anytime I thought there was conflict, I don't want there to be conflict. I'm sorry. Maybe we can make everything okay really quick because I don't want you to be upset. And that's not an apology. That is emotional mismanagement, right? That's emotional management. I'm trying to regulate their emotions. I'm trying to regulate my emotions, but it's really emotional mismanagement because I'm trying to manipulate their emotions by hurrying and saying I'm sorry before I even know what's the hurt? And so, as the person who is needing to express remorse, I will ask a ton of questions. I will get super curious before I ever start to apologize, because unless I understand what I'm expressing remorse for, I won't apologize. If I don't understand why you're hurting, I'm not going to lean into it. So hopefully that clarifies steps 3 and 4. Should we hit some of the
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah, and I was thinking, and it's almost dismissive, because if you go, "Oh, sorry," you're
It,
going,
it's super
"Done."
dismissive.
Yeah, done. Let's go. Yeah, I'm on to the next thing. So
It's super dismissive for sure.
okay, so I'm gonna go to the first one. Again, how do you address irrational reactions that are in fight, flight, etc., when people don't mean to say hurtful things but continue to do so?
So I mean, it's good that you're recognizing that they are in fight or flight, right? They're in a panic response. And so a lot of times that can help us to calm, like, all right, I'm not going to take this personal. I know that they're in a rough place. That can help to us to regulate. But there are times where they're so irrational and so hurtful that I might have to remove myself and say, hey, I'm going to go for a walk, because I can't do this conversation when I'm feeling attacked, and I'm sad because I don't want to abandon you. So I'm going to address the fact that me leaving might feel like abandonment or rejection, but I can't do, and I'm just going to call it this, I can't do emotional or verbal abuse and stay present with you. And so I'm going to call a friend, I'm going to go for a walk, and I'll be back. Now, the trick is you got to come back and you got to say, hey, tell me where you're at. I really want to be here for you. If you're still in a really rough place, I'm not sure I can do this conversation, right? That's how I'm going to handle it, because that's what my regulation might look like. But I might also say, hey, can we just pause for a second? Can I hold your hand? Can we just breathe for a second? Because if we can't slow this down, I'm not going to be able to continue this conversation, and I want to be here for you. Right? There's lots of different things we can do. If I'm the irrational one, if I'm the one that's in a fight, flight, or freeze, I'm going to be learning some tools like, you know what, pause, and I'm looking around for 4 things in the room that are purple, and I'm maybe even moving back and forth, touching different walls, and just getting some body movement going on, trying to slow down the conversation. And so, slowing things down instead of being reactionary is a really important key to like what to do in those really irrational moments, like you said.
I think too, it's like, you're saying this continues to happen. Okay, so this is going to happen again. So talking about it, like we were talking about earlier, talking about it when it's not happening, when things are going well. Hey, we continue to have these issues. Can we come up with a plan? And I really do like this. We're problem solving on a situation. We want to have a different outcome. So, like this is the dance we're doing. This happens, you react like this, and then it doesn't go anywhere. So, when like I like what Matt was saying about like getting grounded, so can you identify when you start to feel like you're going to, fight or flight or freeze, where you start feeling it in your body, being aware of those things of like, okay, I'm starting to feel it in my chest or in my gut. Okay, then what do I need to slow it down? And for the person who keeps doing this repeat to go, hey, I'm starting to feel this. I think I need to slow it down and get regulated. And then we can continue the conversation. And then it can be a conversation rather than this whole thing. But yeah, I appreciate that Matt was talking about take yourself out of this situation if that's what's going to happen, because otherwise that pattern just continues to repeat. So you starting to change the choreography is how things can start to be different. But I really do think it's best to talk about these things and have a plan. Can we try this plan? And then, okay, well, that mostly worked, but let's tweak it a little bit and try this next time, and then all of a sudden things start to shift and there isn't the, react and reactions and all of that. You're moving forward on a different path. Okay, so here's another one. I hear you both talking about what one consciously aware of, but what about what's stored in the subconscious?
So I want to answer this question, but I'm not entirely sure of what the
Here's what I think
context
this
of that
is.
one was.
Yeah, see, I think this is like I'm if I'm doing these things that are hurtful, if I'm injuring and I'm
Yeah.
not doing it intentionally, but isn't there some subconscious level where I know that I'm doing these things and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I can compartmentalize the heck out of that and I can make
Oh,
sure it's so subconscious it's in the deep freeze down where I don't
I,
ever have to deal with it.
well, and it's funny because this one I think will partially answer the next question.
Okay,
So basically, you have to understand that when I'm talking about, or Tammy's talking about the intentions of an individual, whether they're intending to hurt somebody or not, that gives them no excuse for the unhealthy behavior. And so
correct.
we have to be careful because too often somebody who didn't mean to do the hurting but still grossly injured their partner will be like, well, but I didn't mean to hurt you. In fact, I wasn't ever going to tell you and I was going to take it to my grave. Like, this isn't about you. And there's truth to that. In lots of cases, it isn't about them, except that it totally injures their partner because we had either in implicit or explicit agreements that this type of crap isn't going to happen in our relationship. And so, whether you intended to or not, you beat me to a pulp and drag me across the country with, just miserable, right? Like, so we have to be careful that what I was trying to delineate is sometimes a wounded person creates a story in their head about why this happened or didn't happen, and then they put it on the other person and want the other person to take ownership for the story that they've created. Now, here's the hard part. Even if your story is accurate, if that person doesn't have the conscious ability to recognize it and own it, they're not going to healthily be able to do that. They have to work on their subconscious to figure out at some point, is that actually true? Did I subconsciously intend to injure my partner? Well, over time in therapy, if that turns out to be true, they can say, you know what, to be honest, I was holding a lot of resentment over the years that I never was able to tap into. And I took it out on you in this way. Okay, great. Let's have a conversation about that. But you can't ask somebody to apologize for something subconscious that they aren't even aware of. And if you think you have the capability of bringing that to their consciousness, I'm sorry to say that's probably, I'm trying to use a kinder word than delusional because I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm just trying to say, as a partner, we're way too close to each other for either one of us to be able to pull that out of each other's subconscious. It's going to take a therapist who is detached from the situation to even be able to explore that. And so I only say that because that's the reality for me. I can't tell you how many times over the years my wife has said, well, have you thought about this? And it drives her crazy because she'll say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And I'm like, nah, 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 that doesn't fit. That doesn't fit. And then I'm in therapy and I come back and I'm like, honey, you'll never guess what came out of my subconscious today. And it was this. And I tell her, and she's like, huh, never heard that before, huh? And my wife's not like that, but that's the concept. She's like, you know what's funny, sweetheart? I've been telling you that for 20 years. And so, why I say that is not to be rude. I just don't think that as partners, we have the ability to be that close to each other and to pull from each other's subconscious most of us don't want to let our partner into our subconscious. We don't even want to go there ourselves. So it takes a therapist to help us explore that. And if it's not a therapist, it's a more detached person who doesn't feel as personal. So I hope that makes sense and wasn't too much of a tangent.
Well, but and I'm thinking, as someone, in recovery, if somebody's poking at all of those things, like if I've got solid recovery and I'm able to bring that into the light, great. But otherwise, guess what? That would be, I would be running to go act out because, oh my gosh, that is exactly what I have been trying to repress for all of this time. That is
Yeah,
way too scary, can't deal with it. So all of this stuff is layers and there's no quick fix. This is not a, well, now you know about it and you're going to magically be all better. No, this is all stuff, I've had more learning. Troy Love, we've just talked about him. We talk about him a lot when we do these webinars.
I love
I
Troy
love Troy
Love,
Love.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
I
But
talk
like,
about him too.
yeah, but it's like one of those things where, and Matt talked about abandonment wounds. I did not know. I could not have articulated that I have an abandonment wound. And I do. And having the knowledge about that, when it was time, then it was like, okay, and now I'm ready to work on that. And, so now I have like all of those things, but it has to be in a time when I'm able to to be able to look at this and be in a safe place with the right support and with a good therapist. I mean, I did all of those things because I needed and it helps. But man, if somebody had, when I was 5 seconds, to, and I can say abstinent, I wasn't acting out, I wasn't using. Okay, heck no, heck no. So, giving for a partner, I would hope that you would give yourself the gift of healthy boundaries, the gift of self-care,
Yeah.
focusing on you and your healing. And the addict's journey, it will be slower than you absolutely deserve
Oh,
or want.
oh,
And
totally.
if they do like if you
It's
do
one of
the
the
work
great
well.
injustices. I say this
Mhm.
all the time. One of the greatest injustices in this work is when somebody who's recovering from an addiction or whatever it might be, when they're recovering, it takes so long for them to start figuring things out that the betrayed partner in the beginning and even through it is almost like, hey, cool, we've gotten here, but you're going to have to wait even longer because the partner who's done all the hurting can't even tap in to what's going on, and they have to do a bunch of recovery before they can really start showing up for you. It's like one of the worst injustices, and yet it exists, and I don't know what else to do about it other than to tell people I am so sorry. Like, you're at the start of the journey, and in so many ways you're going to have to wait and be patient, and hopefully they get there to where they can actually start showing up for your pain. It's awful. So hope that's helpful.
Well, but the other thing is, if you look at this as stunted growth, we're under age 10, you know, and I
Right.
honestly, I know mine was 8 years old. I just know that. So like, I always
8
think
years
about
old.
my 8 years old. And now I have the gift of, being able to look back and see these things. I wouldn't have been
Yeah.
able to do that in early recovery. And so, I know I was below 8. I was much older than that when I got into recovery. And, it's been this growth process. So, just understanding that this is complicated stuff and it will take time. And it does, it we do not think that your healing as a partner has got to be, I mean, hopefully it's, there's some journey and everything else, but does not have to be dependent on what your addict is doing. Like having the focus be all on what that person is doing or not doing, then you are never empowered. We have an empowered women's retreat. And I love that we called it that because that is empowering for your healing, not based on, well, if he's doing good, then I'm going to have a good day. If he's doing bad, and I've got to pay attention to everything he's doing, and then I'm going to be somehow affected by that. Sure, it can be, it can be a lot nicer when they're in recovery, but we see people heal regardless. So I would invite you to, do your healing regardless. And yes, to your point, how do you say that the hurt is not intentional when most the trade partners are more angry about the line, of course, and gaslighting than they are about the actual acts of betrayal? The line is obviously intentional. No, the concealment of important information is intentional, deceiving, or manipulative, right? And
So,
I would say, yeah, go ahead.
well, so this honestly, I love this question, but I will tell you, I think you're misunderstanding um, what because even in this case, I think you might be misunderstanding and listen carefully because it I will the research shows that lying is more painful than the actual acts of betrayal. And there is lots of research, I think, that's been done around that to show that the lying is actually the most painful part. But if we dive into the lying, you say it's obviously intentional. Well, it's interesting how many people I've worked with where they lie unintentionally, meaning they'll lie and what's coming out of their mouth, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not even meaning to lie, but I'm lying. And like, and sometimes they'll keep going with the lie because they've already started to lie. And sometimes there are some people, and I would actually say quite a few people that I've worked with, where they have to learn, why are you even lying to begin with? Where did you learn to lie in order to survive in your life? And I'm not even talking like necessarily that these are like oh gosh, I'm trying to think of the word. Like they're chronic liars, but these are people that for whatever reason, anytime they have a sense of fear that comes up, they will immediately lie as a way to try and minimize the fear or the repercussion, whatever it might be. And so when you say the lying is obviously intentional, and I'm not excusing, there might be some people who absolutely every lie is intentional, but in their twisted brain, their intention is, well, I don't want to hurt you. And the truth is, they believe it. They believe in their brain that they are protecting you. And in some sense, that's a beautiful thing. I love my spouse so much. I just want to protect them. What's not beautiful is it's so twisted and unhealthy that they end up lying to try and protect them and they hurt them worse because of all their lying. And so there's nothing healthy about it. But to say that the lying or the concealment of important information is intentionally deceiving or manipulating, well, sure. But sometimes it's rooted in positive intention. And this is why intention doesn't matter when we go into apologies. This is the quickest way to kill an apology is to start talking about what you intended to do, right? So if you came, so like for instance, when in that situation where I was talking about the woman with Troy, from what I from what I remember, I spent the time trying to understand her hurt and pain. And once I did, I was able to go, oh my gosh, I can see it. That makes so much sense. Thank you so much for telling me, for trusting me. I'm sad that you got hurt from what I said. Now, I can't remember, but if she had said, well, what was your intention? Only then can I share what my intention is. When the person asks for my intention, then I can share it. But if I ever try to share my intention in any type of apology before the person actually wants it, I negate the apology altogether. And so if at any moment I'm like, oh, whoa, whoa, wait, let me tell you why you shouldn't be hurt because I didn't mean it. Like that's like the worst way to, it's not an apology. Even if
No.
even if the intentions are good, it's horrible. And
Mhm.
so there is no excuse for lying and concealing of important information. That is the surest way to damage a relationship. If you're gonna have an affair, then be honest about it, right? If you're gonna hurt your partner, be honest about it. The lying makes it infinitely worse. Um, but and so yes, I am saying in their twisted mind, the hurt may not be intentional, but that's where most couples fight is we start arguing over intentions, and that's the problem. So I'm actually trying to tell you, forget about intentions. If you are going to have the best, healthiest apologies possible, stop talking about the intentions. Just start talking about what happened and why and how it hurt, because that's what matters. When you start, when you as a betrayed partner start trying to figure out the intention, you're actually making it worse. And when the injuring partner starts to talk about intentions, they're making it worse. Now, once we work through a healthy apology and we feel heard and understood, and we start then talking about intentions after we have connection with each other, that can actually be really healing. Like, because imagine I come to you and you really hurt me, and you go, oh my gosh, I can see that. I'm so sad you're hurt. And I say, help me understand, what was your intention? And you tell me, honestly, I wasn't even thinking. I was so unhealthy and I did this horrible thing to you. And I see now how damaging it is. My intention was just to be a selfish prick, right? Like in that moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for being honest. Like, thank you so much for helping me understand what was going on in your head. But asking about intentions before somebody even has the consciousness to respond, it can take years to understand the intentions of like a deep rooted addiction type behavior. So talking about intentions is kind of a really difficult and touchy thing.
So in our residential treatment program, the partners have the opportunity to write a letter of how the addict's actions and behaviors have been hurtful. And you're right, 90% of it is about the lying, and they are rightfully angry about all that. And yes, there is still, the behaviors and all that, and how those have impacted them. And denial is, I'm lying to myself. And Matt's right. Yeah, it's like, I didn't want to hurt you. But there's also usually from a young age, this is how I learned to navigate. Lying was, the facade of how we approach the whole world, our family. It's like there's lots of stuff underlying that, but
Oh
there's
yeah.
always an intended outcome. Like, I don't want you to be mad at me and pull away from me. And addicts are great at come here, go away, come here, go away. So
Right.
like it's scary to be really close and vulnerable, but don't leave me, and all of that. It's so complicated, and to try to make it into a ABC really, really minimizes how complex this is. Again, focus on what do you need to do to heal you. And hopefully your addict partner is doing the work that they need to do. In our residential treatment program, we say, tell the truth and tell it faster. It's not about, the acting out behaviors. Of course it is, some of that, but it's about, all the stupid things of, when I said that 5 minutes ago, that wasn't the complete truth. I will share this one story, and Scott has said this recorded on a webinar, so I'm not telling tales, but he talked about, like lying is so fundamental to us as addicts. He said, I was in a 12-step meeting, the safest place to tell the actual truth. And he found himself saying lies. This is early in recovery, and had to finally stop himself and go, wait, that was a lie, and I was like, that's where we learn to practice this stuff in a safe place where they're really going to go, thanks for telling us the truth, versus a partner who we've betrayed and hurt so badly. And there's so much vulnerability with trying to do it differently. So we have to go practice it with other people that can tolerate us, going, well, of course you lied, you're an addict.
It's so interesting that you tell that story about Scott, because I was doing a men's recovery group, a therapeutic recovery group,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a guy who was doing a really heavy process, and was uh, really far into his recovery work, and he was going through basically traumas that had happened throughout his life, and he tells this story, this really elaborate, like totally convincing story. And I don't remember, either me as the therapist or one of the other group members asked a few questions, and out of nowhere he just stops and he goes, I haven't thought about this for so many years. This story is a lie.
Wow.
And it was, and we were like, wait, what? And he's like, I have told this story for the last 40 years the same way. And I put it here to tell all of you because it's one of my stories. It's like one of the things that, and as I sit here telling you, I'm realizing it's a lie. And then what we did as a group was go, well, let's talk about that. Like, what is that about now? Like, how were you able to realize and own in this situation that it's a lie? Because we're in a therapy group and not a 12-step program. And
Hmm.
we spent the rest of the time processing, like, why have you learned to tell stories like this and lie? And why did you lie originally? And what was this all? And we pulled that thing apart and it was so cool. But it was like, it's something that in a way it was like, really, here in this group where you're paying money to process, and yet you just did what you've always done, which is lie. It was so cool, but the truth is I think that happens all the time.
I do too, but what a gift that he went, wait, that's,
Oh,
and then let the therapy group really do the work to help. Yeah, I bet that was a massive shift,
oh,
of being able to own, yep, I've been lying to myself and everyone else for decades.
so much that I believed it. And that's
Yes.
what's interesting is then we started to explore, like, well, what other stories do you tell everyone? What other stories have you told for decades that are also lies, right? And it was just like, what? And it was, I don't remember, but I think it was like, I'm gonna have to think about that because there probably are some that I've fabricated, added little details in to make it a certain way. And that's the crazy thing about the brain is we can actually lie to ourselves to where we could pass a polygraph because we believe it now.
Yep.
Um, it's wild.
Yes. And denial, it starts with denial. I'm lying to myself, and
Right.
then I can share that with everyone else, and I can say it so convincing that you got a whole group of people sitting there listening, going, oh my gosh, what a, and wait, that's a lie. So
Yeah,
okay,
it
the
was,
next question
cool.
is, so number four is not making an apology, but is an initial step. It's showing up, listening, and showing an appropriate emotional response, sadness, remorse, etc., to the harm that was expressed.
Yeah, so number four is where the, like, technically number four is actually where the apology would really come into play in the steps. But that's why when we understand, like, apologies and forgiveness, like, it's hard to like, the whole process is what is an apology, if that makes sense. It's
Hmm.
because I don't think anybody can make an apology without really listening and understanding and showing the appropriate emotional response. But technically in the stages, number four is where the apology officially is made, if that makes sense. And so hopefully that helps. So yeah, if somebody said, so number four is the apology, I'd say no, the whole thing is. But technically, that's the point at which somebody would say, man, I understand you now. And now that I understand you, now that I understand the impact that I've had on you, I'm going to from a heartfelt place, apologize for your hurt, for your, I'm going to share with you the remorse, the regret that I feel, the sadness that I feel because of the injury you're experiencing at my hand or the hand of somebody else. But I can see it and I hurt with you. So yeah, I would say technically number four is where making an apology actually happens. Um, I hope that helps.
And we're out of questions. So what else on this theme shall
Really?
we?
We're not gonna take the last two to the next one? I'm just kidding.
Well, we
Um,
could, yeah, because I was thinking this is really about, to me, and an opportunity. Like I've shared before, I do amends, and so,
yeah.
because sorry, 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 like, but an amends is I'm taking ownership of what I've done, and then I like living amends, for the deep hurts, like I have to do things differently, because otherwise it was like that first question where it was, but they keep doing the same thing. So I can say sorry and then do the same thing over again. So nothing changes.
Yep. So number 5 is the wounded one. Now that they feel heard, now that they feel a genuine apology, can now ask for some type of comfort. Um, and they can tell that their partner of the connection that was lost or was missed because of the injury, and can ask for that connection. And it's super hard because sometimes the comfort is just in this experience. It's the sitting here and slowly going through this, meticulously making sure that we meet each other's needs in every step of the process. Like that in of itself can be hugely comforting. But sometimes it could be a hug, it could be just sitting in that space with each other, it could be some sort of fake regular acknowledgement of understanding that impact. If I recognize on a regular basis, if I've injured my spouse and I recognize on a regular basis, like, hey, I know that it's Friday the 13th, and I know that that can be something that, and even if you aren't sharing with me that you're feeling injured today, I can say to you, like, hey, I just want you to know that I acknowledge that you might be feeling injured today, and I hate that I've impacted you in this way, and I just want you to know that I think about you and I care about you. That in and of itself might be the comfort we're asking for. I was working with someone recently who said, "Well, now that I've been able to like own and apologize, like when are we never going to talk about it again?"
Uh-huh.
And some of the comfort is, "Hey, if we need to talk about it, I'm here, and let's talk about it." Now in that particular case, it was somebody saying, I'm tired of feeling all my shame around it. Well, if I work on my shame and I don't feel all the shame for the dumb choices I've made, then eventually it's like, oh, you can bring it up and it doesn't make me happy or excited, but we can talk about it anytime you need to. I'll be here for you. And that might be the comfort that I'm needing moving forward. And so that's number 5. And then lastly, well, I kind of just combined those two. Number 6 is the partner then provides the antidote and gives comfort. I'm here now. You're not alone anymore. I'm working on my recovery so that I actively practice not injuring you moving forward, not like I did. And I'm here now, and I can continue to hear your hurts and show comfort for you. And that sixth part is where it's essentially me being the one I needed to be for you for so long, because that's what we both deserve for each other. And the truth is, the partner who is struggling with addiction, that partner has to go through these steps and receive uh, apologies from their partner who may be a betrayed spouse. Like, the truth is, this is just what every relationship needs and looks like. So this isn't for the betrayed partner to be the injured one all the time, and the partner struggling with addiction to be the one doing the forgiving all the time. The truth is, this needs to go both ways. There's all sorts of injuries we've both caused each other over the years. So the betrayed partner needs to learn how to do these as the one providing comfort just as much as the other. And that may sound terribly painful for me to hear, because I'm not suggesting that the partner struggling with addiction is just as injured by the betrayed partner, but injuries are real both directions. And unfortunately, this just takes a lot of time and effort to figure out.
So so Matt, but I'm the betrayed partner and that person has hurt me worse. Why would I apologize for anything? Why would I take ownership of my behaviors? My behaviors were in reaction to what all of the hurt that has been caused.
Absolutely. In that sense, I could blame any behavior I ever make on as a reaction to anything, and then never take accountability. Right? Like I could, if I were struggling with an addiction, I could be like, well, it's not my fault. I was raised in trauma. I was just reacting to that, and you happen to be in the way. And so the reality of it is that a healthy relationship means we both are taking accountability for any injuries we've caused each other, whether it was intentional or unintentional, a reaction or non-reaction. In order to have a healthy relationship as a peer to peer, which is what a partner and partner would be, we're showing up for each other to help each other through whatever injuries they have, whether either one of us caused it or not, or it's in reaction to the other or not. We still need to own our unhealthy behavior, or even behavior that wasn't unhealthy that still caused injury, because that's what comforting each other looks like. I have no idea if that answered your question, Tammy.
No, it does. And I think it goes back to, what is the goal? And if the goal is, I mean, you know, everybody's wounded, the addict is wounded, the betrayed partner, everybody's got wounds. And we can either stay in those wounds and angry and hurt and everything else, or if our goal is, like you said, in a partnership, to be in a partnership, and we want healing and joy and serenity, for ourselves and hopefully for the relationship, then yeah, like it takes, it takes us looking at our own behaviors and how we're showing up for ourselves and other people. And this is not just in a primary relationship, we're talking about it, in a paired relationship, but these are, things, if I've got a work colleague and, things are out of sorts, like this is an opportunity I can show up differently if I choose to. So great stuff as always. Injuries happen everywhere, and being being able and willing to look at how we want to move forward is important. So
Good job, guys. I love the questions. I hope that you come back and continue to challenge me. I love those questions where you guys are like, this doesn't sit right. I don't like this. And I'm like, awesome. Let's talk about it. That's the tough stuff we all need to dive into. So I'm proud of you guys for showing up. I look forward to seeing you all next time.
thanks, Matt. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.